I'm thinking about the CPD, or continuous professional development system, that we have here in South Africa, which actually encourages that kind of reflection, where you must think about what are the next steps for you, and how are you going to go about achieving those goals. And very, very important in development. So we have to always be, in terms of our curriculum system, what are the fruits thereof, and what can we do to improve? And I think one must emphasize, even though one is talking about an Afrocentric actuarial profession, one is not saying that we must throw out that which is core, that which makes us what we are as actuaries. We have to know what that is, and now say what is core, and who can I partner with for this elective or that elective? Who can I partner with for data analytics? Who can I partner with for banking, etc.? Who can I partner with for general insurance? Whatever it is that is important in a specific market, I think it's important to have a conversation like that. And this model of a professional, something that I've been using for about 8 years, because I took slides that I used about 8 years ago, about 6 years ago, also here in Cape Town. Florence Nightingale, I always say that even though, again, when you're talking about Afrocentric, it doesn't mean anything from Europe is bad and we should only have things from Africa. No, that is foolishness. And whatever works elsewhere, that can work for us, we should take on. But what doesn't work, we should obviously not use, and we should find things that work. And I think here, the inspiration is about that ownership that a professional must take to say, this is the change I want to make in my context, in my world, and this is how I'm going to go about it. And essentially, this is what this young lady did back then. She used whatever was available to achieve an end. And that is the attitude we should have as professionals and also as associations, to say, what do we want to achieve in our country, and how can
can hear you. Okay. Okay. So we open up for questions. If you have any question for Luzani, I think we will do that now, and then we'll move on to the next session. Okay, okay. Is he on? Because
thank you. The technology has made all of us to be talking with a ghost. So that's interesting. So there are a lot of challenges, especially I'm from Nigeria, and I know there are so many groups that have gathered themselves together in this form to try to start organizing or conducting a kind of professional examination in the name of getting chartered. So it's a very difficult task. If you should go from country to country, or even West Africa, not to talk of the whole of Africa, it might be easier at that level. But at national level, it will be very difficult because it has to pass a lot of stages and the procedure before you can get chartered. I'm borrowing experience from the one we have been pursuing, and one of the champions of that, Risk Managers Association of Nigeria. We have been trying to get chartered. He has passed through the Senate so many times, and the journey is very frustrating. So I don't know if a National Association, Actuarial Society, Nigerian Actuarial Society should try to do that when they will end up doing that. Because if we can get it at that local level or national level per se, then the contents of the contents being peculiar to each locality is talking about will be relevant. So that's my contribution.
Thank you. I think that's a good idea and a good proposition. I know your president is a vice chair to the African Task Force. Maybe we'll talk more with her and then look at the national approach of what you have talked about. In Ghana here, we started something, and it has to go through Parliament, like you are saying. And you have to do a lot of lobbying. And in our Parliament here, you have to spend your whole time with them to understand who even an actuary is before they can even listen to you. So it's another thing, but it's good. The African Task Force is starting from one end, trying to get the associations on the right path to become full members, associate members of the IA. And then you'll be guided from that point, because others have gone ahead of us. And you must learn from them. You can't just jump into the boat. You might get drowned. So it's a lot of work, but it needs commitment as well from the leadership. And so we'll look at it again from the task force point of view. I don't know whether anybody has any addition or contribution to do to that effect.
Sort of echoing what Lusani said earlier, Lusani is Peter Royak from the CAS. I'm going to be speaking Friday, 11:20, just another advertisement, about a standard professionalism framework that could be adopted. It's just a suggestion with a code of conduct, standards of practice, and continuing education. And I'm going to suggest maybe some sharing among African societies. But again, what Lusani had opened with is it only becomes robust and lives forever if it's run by the local countries, the local societies. There is a framework that there's no one-size-fits-all. Okay, here, use this for your professionalism. Use this code, use these standards, because there's, what, 54 different nations, 54 different sets of rules. So it has to be augmented at the local level because of the local standards, and it has to be run by the local actuaries, because that's the way it's going to survive and thrive, just to be run locally by the actuaries in that nation that are subject to the standards. And it grows and it builds on top of itself. So it's important that it be run in country as opposed to someone from overseas. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah, you made a lot of sense. I have a lecturer who said 2 heads are better than 1 if both heads are working. So I agree with you. Any more? Okay, so we move. Is he still on? Ask if he wants to. Luzanne. Luzanne.
Hello,
Yes, I'm struggling to hear all of the contributions, so it's difficult for me to make input. But I've been trying to.
Are you still there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, so we are listening, please.
I was saying that I didn't pick up all of the contributions, all the questions. Maybe you can summarize for me, because I can hear you clearly now, and then I'll make comments.
Okay. We're taking it from your presentation. And a gentleman from Nigeria is asking about charter. And starting from the local level, the national level. And give a little reference to their environment and how we can take it to the higher stages. And then I think Peter also brought up very good suggestion. I hope he will repeat himself so that, yeah, you can also make your input. So please stay on.
Yeah, Lusani, what I was saying is I'm presenting on professionalism on Friday, and I'm going to present a framework that can maybe shared for mostly for continuing education among local African national societies. But there's no one-size-fits-all that can, hey, any of you developing actuarial societies can use this, because there are local laws, regulations, insurance rules that make each of the 54 nations different here. So there has to, in order to be a robust professionalism format, or framework. It has to be run and maintained at the local level. And I was referring to, you had mentioned Nkrumah, what he had said, and I mean, I agree. It has to be run at the local level by the African national actuaries, not from anywhere else outside of Africa. But, you know, get a start, yes, but again, it's got to be built up and maintained by the local actuaries who are subject to the regulations and rules and standards and ethics and continuing education. So I agree with your initial statement and position.
Pick up from this last, the input from speaker from some gaps in that input, so I didn't quite get the full gist of it. But just to agree with the statement made now, yes, there is a lot of contextualization that needs to happen, and yes, it needs to happen over time. I guess what we're saying is that when we engage with the standards that have already been developed, we have to engage with them very intelligently. It cannot be just a copy-paste. Given the many issues that you have mentioned, there are a lot of things that are more specific to different localities, and there are things that are my main message, and that is what taking on is. As a matter of, to be quite intelligent, if you we always speak of the word, you know, regurgitation. You know, if you just study and
Hey, you are cut off. We can't hear you anymore. I think it's not from. Okay. So, Luzanne, if you can't hear us and we can't hear you, then thank you for your presentation. And we'll continue with the next session. Shall we give a round of applause for Luzanne? The next session, we will have a plenary session. But before, is Mia Karinja here? Oh, Mia. I think Mia will take Mia's presentation now. Please put on the slides and we'll welcome Mia from SolveCo. Shall we give a applause?
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm also going to do some marketing for Friday morning. Yes. So today I'm not going to talk about SolveCo and my company. Today is really about, not quite an app yet, but we decided to show it to you today, and I encourage you to please share it with your students. The purpose of this website that we are, well, it's finished in development, but we welcome input from you, is really a place where students can get together give their input, collaborate in terms of subjects that they are writing. It's a way for tutors to also have access. We know that there are a lot of people in the industry wanting to help students. This is a place where they can do it. So there's an option for tutors then to log on to say, I'm here to help you with this subject. You can take it offline and actually go and collaborate with the students. So that's the purpose of the site that we've worked on, that we welcome any input from. So there is a little short video, but I don't know if the video is going to show. But you are also welcome to look at the site. Technology. The site is called actuarialroom.com. And like I say, it is done, but please send us any feedback, join the rooms, let us know if there's anything else that we can add. So we have the Actuarial Society of South Africa and all their subjects on there already, but we want to add all the different societies on there to try and make it a little bit easier for students. In my business, I employ graduates directly from the university. So we have a lot of training that we go through, and that's also the reason why we've done this. It's just to help people. There's that need. I mean, and we've seen now with COVID, everybody's a little bit disconnected, but this is kind of like a way for students just to interact. There's one person in my company that said, Mia, I'm so lonely when I study. I just want to know that there's somebody else studying as well. And I thought, yes, I know, it's fine. So this is a little bit of that. I'm also here. I'm also writing this subject. So please share it with your students and let us know if you have any feedback. But that's all. And like I say, it's really an advert for Friday morning, 10 o'clock. And we try to make it a little fun nerd. It's okay? We're not just nerds. We're also fun people. Yes, so as I said, it's called the Actuarial Room. So you have your login. You can see it's also private. You can collaborate and interact with your students. There's, like I said, the tutoring and the mentoring is probably the biggest part of the site. It's sort of to give people a platform. Then there will be training courses and events can also be booked on this site. I'm trying to remember what she's saying.
This July 2022. Don't miss out on the royal community the world will see. Starting in
Don't miss out on building the biggest actuarial community the world will see. Starting in Africa. The demo is available now if anyone is keen to try it out on www.actuarialroom.com.
Thank you. Hello? 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 Yes. Okay, so yes, that's me. So if anybody has any questions, yes. Oh, good question. At the moment, we're in English only, but yes, please give us feedback on that. It's not very difficult to change, to add.
What you said, but is it available for anyone in the world, any student in the world?
Are you thinking about translating the website in French, for instance, for my students? Okay, please, thank you. We need it. Thank you.
It's easy to do. Let's do that.
Okay.
Okay.
Good afternoon. Okay, so I have a little experience in building websites too, and I know some challenges that might come when it comes to a website that has like social media-like features. So for the mentorship aspects, what have you, or should I say, what plans do you have to make it really engaging? Because it's one thing to have a great feature, it's another thing for that feature to actually work as planned. So I don't know if you can address that.
So there are various options. Yes, thanks. There are various options, but being an actuary, we know that we are all very shy. So one option is to say, I want you to help me, and then have a separate tutoring session that two people can have like on a one-on-one online basis. Or there is an option to say, I am a coach, I am a mentor, I'm running a session on these subjects, and people can then join that room. So those are the two options that we have. But I agree with you, there are some challenges, and this website took us now 6 months already. So it's quite, in terms of the login and to make sure the privacy settings and those kinds of things are correct, so we're there now. But yes, we welcome, please, any feedback that you've got. Okay. Yes, yes. Okay, French, yes, okay. Of course. Thank you.
Thank you, Mia. Let's give it to her. I like short presentations. Make very little notes. The next session we're going to have the next session beyond the formula, incorporating skill-based modeling and analytics, content in actuarial courses. And that's going to be a plenary. We have about 2 from the SOA, Society of Actuaries. Shall we welcome them to this session? Peterson, Andrew Peterson of the SOE, and Stokely Smart, if he's around. Good. Shall we welcome them, please? We want to see you on the stage. Yeah. Mark. Yes. Will you do a presentation first?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah, it's just two
of you? Okay.
I'm going to speak, then he's going to speak.
Speak. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, we're both speaking separately, so.
Speaking separately.
I mean, I'm speaking, then he's speaking, so I think we can just.
Do we need? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
You're walking away with my glasses.
Oh, sorry.
All right, thank you very much. My name is Andy Peterson. I'm a Senior Director of International Operations for the Society of Actuaries. I'm thankful for the invitation to be able to present today. It's my second time to Ghana, but the first time wearing an official role with the Society. And so we're happy to be able to be here to present. The way this presentation works is I'm really going to be sort of the opening act. Can we get in? We're not in the right view here. I don't think you want to see all my notes, so if we could get into the view that's the presentation view as opposed to the speaker view, that would be most helpful. Thank you. So I'm really going to be more of just doing some introductory slides and talking about analytics and that sort of thing, and then we're going to have Stokely join. Stokely's a professor in Trinidad at the University of West Indies, and so I'm an actuary, but I'm not an academic. So I'm not here to speak to you and tell you how to be better teachers, because that's not my background. I'm happy to talk about anything with respect to how the SOA thinks about some of these things, and that's really how I'm going to position it. In the introduction, I'm going to talk a little bit how we are looking at analytics, data analytics, predictive data science, predictive analytics, how we are incorporating that, and then Stokely's going to talk about how he looks at it from a university perspective, from a teaching perspective, and how they've incorporated those concepts into his particular university, and then give some examples of some specific research projects that they've worked on in their context. So that's really what we're going to try and accomplish today. And of course, we'll try and save some time for questions at the end, but again, happy to be here. So let's go to the first slide, and actually go one more. So why analytics? Of course, I think we've all seen sort of this evolution, and the tools that we're using today as actuaries are very different than the tools that we had even 10 or 15 years ago. And so the whole context has shifted in terms of what actuaries need to know as to be credentialed and experienced actuaries. And those of us who passed the examinations 10 or 20 years ago, there's all these new tools and techniques that we never had exposure to. But it's important that actuaries today learn about that. So why are some of these new approaches needed? In the historical context, I think one way to think about it was we had limited tools, maybe a lot of data, but we had limited tools to be able to do that. So we had statistical techniques that were looking at, all right, if we look at this sampling of data, can we then generalize that based on that smaller set into a broader context? Now we have sort of the reverse problem where we have lots of data, big data, and now we're having to kind of do the reverse. Well, what does that big data tell us that we can then use in a specific situation? So in this context, before a goal might have been to answer a specific question. Does drug A work better than drug B? And so we have these common features. We're trying to get to an answer as quickly as possible, but data is costly, right? So we want to get an answer with the fewest possible observations. We're trying to use that small data, and to do that, but it makes it hard to distinguish, you know, do we have a real effect, or is there just some sort of random sample in the sample and so therefore we're actually missing sort of the broader meaningful impacts. If we go to the next slide then, today our goal is really to understand and predict. So what factors are, as examples, what factors are related to lapse rates, or what is the mortality rate for those with a particular set of attributes? The common features are that we have a significant amount of data, but we also have a larger number of variables. So the sort of the downside of the problem is we may actually be finding relationships that aren't there. So you come up with this great model and it looks good, but you may not actually, you get some spurious results that aren't meaningful. And so that can be a problem in sort of the new world. So we need to understand as actuaries, how do we work and think in that context? So that's why we, as the SOA, at least in our context, and I know I'm talking in the context of the SOA, I know the faculty, the IFOA, the CAS, the other testing credentialing bodies all have these sorts of components in their pathways. We've all been adapting. So if we go to the next slide, just a brief explanation of how we've incorporated that into our pathway, and then I'll turn it over to Stokely. So next slide. This is just a pictorial view of our associate, our Associate of the Society of Actuaries, our ASA pathway. And what you'll see, I don't want to spend time on all the components or bore you. I'm happy to talk afterwards with any of you about the details, but that's not the point of here. I'm just showing what we've done. And in the dotted lines are things that relate to data analytics, our probability exam and our mathematical statistics requirement. But the dark lined areas are all new components in the last 5 years. In fact, we added a statistics for risk modeling and a predictive analytics examinations. Those are both, I believe, came in around 2018. And just this last year, we announced, and for the first time in 2022, we'll be testing on a new exam, advanced topics in predictive analytics. So you can see we have 3 components of our associate pathway, which weren't even in the system 3 or 4 or 5 years ago. That's how we see the importance of analytics and big data, predictive analytics, being a part of the role of actuaries and the common knowledge that all actuaries need to have as part of their approach to those tools. So just quickly, next slide, just a little bit of the details. So the SRM, Statistics for Risk Modeling, it's a 3.5-hour exam, and so on. We talk about some of the details, focus on machine learning, supervised learning, unsupervised learning, some of those components. Again, there's much more detail on our website. The second component on the next slide is our predictive analytics exam. It's listed as a 3.5-hour. It actually was, until our most recent change, it was actually a 5-hour examination. But we try and make this a very real world situation. So there's a series of online modules that you go through and work through. When you're done with that, then the test itself is what was a 5-hour, will be 3-hour in the future, real world sort of situation where you're given a data set, you work on R, Excel, and have to basically write code, analyze the data, create a solution over the course of that time period, and then you submit that, and that's really the result of what you're doing. Again, on the next slide, I just highlight that this final area we've added, this most recent examination is new this year. And in that case, it's just more of these topics, but in this case, it's actually now we've given you a take-home test. So you have 96 hours, again, even sort of more real world in terms of how your work situation would be, that you have the ability to take it home, get it done over those 96 hours. We hope you don't work 96 hours straight. I suppose a few students might try that, and usually that's not a recipe for success. But it covers some of the more advanced topics and some things around ethical use of data. So, and the models and that sort of thing, and we try and get around the, I know I heard a discussion earlier about communication. It's hard to test communication, but we are trying to test that you can write up a report that you could present to management or that sort, or a client, that sort of thing. So that's really what the focus is in that context. So these are the components that we as the SOA, as our organization, feel are important, and that we are testing, requiring students who come through our pathway to show competence in, because we believe this is such an important area. The final thing I'll just note is that we, in addition to that, we have a focus on this education for post-credentialing. So we know, as I said earlier, actuaries like myself who've been credentialed for 10, 20 years, or 30 years for a few in the room, you know, we didn't get any of this material. So we've created certificates, and again, I know the other associations have similar opportunities, the CAS does, the IFOA does. We have 3 certificates that cover these different areas. Well, actually one's in process, 2 are out, available right now. But that cover these areas so that whether you're, have the opportunity to learn this as a, you know, through your pathway, or still want to come back and get it, you have that opportunity. And we think that's important. And even if you're not an SOA member, you can still take these. If you're not a credentialed actuary, you can still take these. But they're out there because we believe this is such an important area of knowledge for actuaries to have today. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Stokely to talk about how he approaches this from the university education context.
Thanks, Andy. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I thank Mark, the coordinator for the conference, for inviting me. I was just coming here to be a member of the audience. Mark then invited me to come and co-present with Andy. So I'm glad to be here to be doing this. I want to give special thanks to 2 members of my team who helped me put this thing together on very short notice, Mr. Zachary Ramluchan and Ms. Gabriela Borneo back in Trinidad. Thanks a lot for all of your assistance. So let's get going. Beyond the formula, how are we going to incorporate modeling and analytics into actuarial courses? Of course, I'm using courses at the University of the West Indies because, of course, that's what I'm familiar with. But this will be for any university program that they can have courses that are similar to this in their program if you want to come up to speed and of course, incorporate this important skill set into your program. Next slide. So my presentation is basically going to have these 5 components: insight into the courses offered that include modeling and analytics, how we have adapted the actuarial science program to the virtual environment, and then how we, and I'll demonstrate how we have connected the courses at the university to actuarial exams with the SOE and with the IFOA. Down the road, I like to be able to connect it to courses that are professional exams with African professional bodies, especially the South African one. I want to talk about I'll demonstrate some of the successes that the program has had in terms of historical employment trends, to show the employability of graduates with a degree in actuarial science, not just with traditional employers, but a myriad of other employers as well. And then I'll give a few examples of how having modeling and the modeling skills and analytical skills that you get at the university level can be used to solve real-world problems. So our program it's a 3-year program. So I'll go through some of the courses in year 1 that have modeling components to them. So of course there are these 2 computer science programming courses, Comp 1 and Comp 2. It's a core requirement for the program. And in it, students get to develop algorithms using C++ coding, right? So we introduce them to coding and whatnot, which again, C++ is the language we use, but once you've learned one language, it's very easy to learn any other language in terms of just going forward in any other computer language. We then have these 2 math courses, which are basically one is for Excel and math, one in Excel, one in MATLAB, again, core requirement for our program. And in it, we introduce statistical software in MATLAB and Excel, which are ubiquitous modeling tools used and have applications in terms of pretty much anything that you're doing in the real world. So we can move on. So then in year 2, we have a probability theory course, again, a core requirement of the program. In this course, we introduce the students to the use of R, which is statistical software and programming language. So we expose them to, we begin with the exploration of well-known probability distributions by simulating samples using R. Then there is Statistics 1, again, a core requirement. We continue the use of R to summarize and geographically represent data. There are various statistical analyses, such as the linear regression model, ANOVA analysis, and so on. And of course, there's an assignment included in the course where students get the opportunity to apply, to use R with in sort of a real-world project, getting real data and such, because we actually use real-world data sets for that course. Finally, in year 3, there's a course in regression with the time series core requirement. Again, there's more use of R, which of course, and part of the reason why we use R is because specifically for the predictive analytics exam that Andy had mentioned earlier, that the SOA runs, R is the tool that they use for that course. So again, we continue to use R here, and again, here's some of the components: regression, principal component analysis, clustering, decision tree modeling, time series modeling. And one component of the course, apart from the regular test, is that we have our regular multiple choice test or written answer test, where they look at more of the theory. The students are required to work on a group project using R to model and analyze real-world data sets. So again, in the university environment, we try to expose the students as much as possible as to how they can use this theory and apply it in the real world with real data. Okay? This other third-year course now, Applied Multivariate Statistics. It's an elective course. It's not, within our program, students have, there are 3 elective courses, advanced elective courses that they have to do. So this is one of the elective courses they can do as part of the degree to meet the requirements of the degree, which has modeling aspects to it. So Applied Multivariate Stats, again, using R to perform a multivariate data screening, PCA, principal component analysis, discriminant analysis, cluster analysis, factor analysis, and so on and so forth. And again, there's a group project included as part of the assessment of the course that requires the use of R to model and analyze real-world data sets. Yeah? And then finally, in year 3, there is the Loss Models 2, which is an elective course where we're using mathematical software to perform maximum likelihood estimation. And again, there'll be a project in that course where we provide the students with real-world data sets to apply the techniques they would have learned in this course. Yeah, so I'll move on now to the next. All right, so yeah, and then I had 2 more year 3 courses. Life Contingencies 2. Again, this is an elective course. No, sorry, this is not an elective course. This is a core requirement of the program. In this course, the students use to determine terminal benefit reserve case study using Excel. And I think we're probably one of the first programs in the world where we actually got a license from Axis. I think Axis is owned by Moody's now. We have a university license from them. So our students at the lab, through the lab at the university, we actually incorporate a project using Access in this course. Access, of course, is a tool used by many insurance companies and consulting firms to do specifically actuarial modeling. So as I said, I think we're one of the first programs, I think anywhere in the world, where we were able to incorporate this into the core requirements of in a course that is a core requirement to our program. I think the University of Toronto, which that's my alma mater, they started doing this subsequent to us, I think because they heard that we were doing it. Yeah. And then finally we have the final year project, which basically tries to tie together everything the students have done in the final semester of the third year of the program, where we try to pull all of the courses, material from all the skills they would have gotten from all of the courses up to that point. And they have two options. They can either come up with their own data and have their own independent study, or we give them a case to analyze, and they have to come up with, well, they have to analyze the case, we give them a lot of data, some guidance and whatnot, and they have to present their results, their analysis to a mock board of directors, of which I'm always the chairman, to help with the decision making on whether the company that they're presenting to will acquire the operations of a rival firm. So the students will, of course, have to use Excel, Word, and then it helps with their communication skills because they actually have to present using PowerPoint in front of the board. Yeah. So very quickly, I'll move on now to how our program has adapted. I'm sure other programs that have done some similar things to the online pandemic paradigm. Of course, having to move online, you suddenly went from in-person exams, where everybody got the same exams, to open book exams, where, of course, students with the advent of social media can communicate with each other and can find all sorts of interesting ways to game the system. So it was quite a challenge to figure out how to maintain the integrity of the degree in the face of the pandemic, while still fairly testing the students and whatnot. So I would say the best way to catch a thief is to have a very good thief, and I'm very good at I thought, well, all right, if I was in a situation, what would I do? And let's come up with countermeasures for that. So one of the things that we did is we had to create large banks of questions. And in the online environment, we had these massive question banks, and then the questions were randomized. So students, everybody basically got different questions on their test. So it was in your interest to necessarily help your friend, because of course you have limited time. So if you're helping your friend, you're not necessarily helping yourself. So that kind of cut down on the collaboration. And then I put a lot of energy into checking online because sometimes questions are leaked online and whatnot, and putting onto some of the cheat sites and on your online environment disinformation, so actually solutions to my questions that had errors in it, minor errors in it and whatnot. So this proved to be quite a useful way of dealing with counterintelligence in the online environment. Yeah. Okay, so move on. So now I'll talk a bit about how the courses at UWI St. Augustine in Trinidad, how they relate to our friends at the IFOA and, of course, at the Society of Actuaries at the SOA. So I'll start off first with the SOA. So these are some of of course, the Society of Actuaries exams, and here are the courses that we have at the university that relate to preparing these students specifically for these professional exams offered by the SOA. Yeah, so as you can see, our curriculum basically prepares, and then of course our curriculum basically prepares students for, we cover about somewhere between 88 to 90% of the material at the ASA level, at the associateship level for the Society of Actuaries. Yeah? So this is how I've tried to map it onto the IFOA. And again, currently in the process of seeing if we are organizing exemptions from the IFOA for the courses that we offer at the University of the West Indies. So I'm in the process of going through that exercise. So again, quite a few courses of the professional exams that the IFOA offers that our program, with the courses that we have here at UWI St. Augustine, prepares the students for. So here now, I'll get into, so again, you know, students, why are they studying actuarial science at the university or doing the professional exams at whatever body, whether it's the FOA, the SOA, the various professional bodies in Africa? Well, ultimately, you want to get a job, you want to get paid, you want to make some money, you want to contribute to society in some sort of meaningful way. Well, I keep quite a comprehensive database of every graduate from our program since inception. Our program's only started in 2011, so about 10 years or so old, so relatively young. Yeah, so we've had about 134 graduates. That'll be a change soon because we just finished the semester. And I've kept a record of the various categories of employers where our graduates have gone. And we have in excess of about 85% employment historically. You see, you know, the 10% at consulting firms, 17% at insurance companies, and then 48% in non-traditional roles. Yeah. So if you look at the, one of the stat, I don't have that stat, but if you look at the amount of tax revenue, income tax revenue generated by graduates of our program who are now employed in the country and internationally, it's quite significant. So we could say proof is in the pudding, and we have empirical data showing how the program is adding value to the country, the region, and the world. Just quickly, just a list of all of the myriad plethora of employers that our graduates are employed by. And they range from banks, universities, the Ministry of Finance, central banks, an airline, you know, vast consulting firms, investment banks, investment banking, and so on and so forth. You might have someone working for Nestle. I don't know if that's there, which is, of course, the international food company, right? Also mentioned here, KR Consulting, one of the biggest actual employers in Trinidad. Mr. Kyle Redden, I think, is in the audience, is here. So he's here, so I just want to give a special shout out to him. Yeah, so again, just to show you the wide variety of opportunities offered to our graduates, and not just from our program, I think any actuarial science program, because of the skill set that you get specifically with modeling and having a good understanding of data analytics. This can be applied to so many employers. All right, so now I'll finish off by giving a few examples of projects that I've worked on where you use some of the tools, the modeling tools from the degree, and I, of course, hire some of our graduates to work with me on projects that have implications for my nation, Trinidad, for my region, which is the Caribbean, and for my planet, the world. Yeah. So the first one I'll talk about is this project, this portable water project that I'm working on. I actually got funding from the University of the West Indies to work on it, where I am exploring to see if there's a correlation between water contamination with heavy metals and such, and whether that's having an impact on violent crime, education, and health in Trinidad. So again, you will use statistical, R in particular, to do some of the statistical analysis, and then of course I've partnered with a chemist and a criminologist to the chemical analysis, and then link that with crime data and GPS mapping data. So again, having an understanding of how to use the tools, especially with the GPS mapping data, mapping that with statistical information and whatnot. Again, having an understanding of data analytics, a thorough understanding of it, is very useful in this particular project. Of course, which will have implications for Trinidad. This is another project. This project was actually completed. It's a project I was working on with the CCJ, the Caribbean Court of Justice, which is the final court of appeal for many jurisdictions within the Caribbean. Interestingly enough, Trinidad is not one of, it's not the final court of appeal for Trinidad, but although it's headquartered there, but there are quite a few nations within the region for which this is. So the CCJ launched a custom-built electronic case management system application in 2017. They decided to match the revenue generated into the revenue generated into the system against the true cost of the system of maintaining it and such, while not making the price of justice prohibitively expensive. So so this was basically like a pricing exercise for it's basically a similar methodology that you'd use for pricing a block of insurance, for some sort of insurance product. It's, again, taking that same thinking, that same methodology, that same algorithm, and applying it in another setting that is analogous. And we ended up doing that. And so we use actuarial techniques of pricing, asset liability management, and the valuing of cash flows to figure out the break-even costs needed to be recouped to ensure sustainability using scenario analysis. And in fact, the CCJ is actually going to they're going to incorporate our recommendations into the new prices for filing documents in the Caribbean, across the Caribbean. So it's already had an effect on jurisprudence across the region. And finally, this is a project that hopefully at some point will have global implications. So it's a dental age estimation project, which is important for both clinical and forensic science and legal proceedings, and it's a method of choice due to its accuracy and reliability. So basically it's an algorithm, a statistical algorithm that analyzes the development of teeth in people under the age of 18, and it can come up with their age with an accuracy of plus or minus a few weeks, whereas other methodologies it's plus or minus a couple of years. So that has huge implications for example, for displaced people. Let's say someone who was in Syria from Aleppo, all of their records have been destroyed. They end up somewhere in Europe. Well, how do you know how old they are? Well, all right, you kind of look at them, well, you come up with the age, it's plus or minus 2 years. Well, should that person be treated as a minor or as an adult? We don't know, because it's plus or minus 2 years. And they have all kinds of societal implications for not having accurate way of assessing someone's age because their records have been destroyed. This can sort of solve some of those issues. And again, you're using data analytics and modeling in the coming up with the algorithm for this particular project. So hopefully this will have global implications. Yeah. So then finally, just very quickly, I want to just point out some of the universities with which UB St. Augustine has student exchange agreements with. These are things that are already in place. Some of them need to be renewed and whatnot. And so everywhere from the University of South African universities, Kenya and Nigeria. If you go to the next slide. Botswana, Ghana, Tanzania, Namibia. So we actually have all of these arrangements, some of which need to be renewed, some of which have expired and need to be renewed, some are already in force, where there's the opportunity for students at UE in Trinidad to visit these universities and vice versa. And you pay the same fees as you would at your home university to go and visit the other universities, and of course the credits are mutually recognized and so on and so forth. Some of our students have taken advantage of this with universities in the University of Toronto in particular and the University of Waterloo in Canada. But it would be great to have some cross-pollination with our brothers and sisters universities in Africa. And of course, we'd love to have you come to Trinidad at some point as well. So that's it for my presentation, and thank you very much for your time. And if there are any questions now for Andy and myself, we'll be pleased to take them. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stokely. That was a wonderful presentation by both Peterson and Stokely. Floor is open for a few questions. Hey, today.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Stokely, there was something that you had highlighted of where your graduates are, and you said that almost 50% of your graduates were in non-traditional roles. Do you have an understanding of what roles those are and what sort of led for them to perhaps not be in traditional industries but follow non-traditional roles, wider fields? Okay.
Right, so there simply aren't enough traditional actuarial employers in Trinidad to hire all of our graduates, yeah? So, so that's why, so we have about 48% of our graduates have jobs in, as I described, as non-traditional roles. So they, again, what they do there, they're basically taking their analytical skills, their modeling skills, and applying it to risk management issues, modeling issues, data analytical issues at the various firms that they've been hired at. That, of course, not, when I say non-traditional, not an actual consulting firm or an insurance company. So that's what I mean by non-traditional. So yeah, so there's been a lot of scope for that. And as, again, we're a relatively young program, so what has been happening is you might have an employer hire one of our graduates, and then you realize, wow, well, this is the value that they're adding. So then I suddenly started getting calls. Could we get more of that, please? Yeah. So that's kind of how it's worked. I hope I've answered your question. Yeah.
So can I ask a follow-up?
Sure.
Do any of them actually end up taking the credentialing process, or do they pretty much, for the most part, just have the degree and that's it?
So you're talking about our graduates in general?
The ones who end up in non-traditional roles.
Oh, yes. Some of them do, some of them don't. Yeah, so it's a combination of the two. Yeah.
Okay. Let's take the second one from.
Thank you.
Your name
and where. Andrews Ablobi, that is University of Professional Studies. Please, I want to, in Ghana, yes, University of Professional. What's the name? Peters was at our place yesterday. Looking at the presentation he has done, in collaborating terms, will we say that this will fall under UCAP or VEE, or which of the category? You know, if you want to model this and I want to apply for SOA, exemptions for your students. Thank you.
So which level are you all at University of West Indies in terms of recognition from the SOA? Are you a UCAP? Do you have the UCAP or not?
I'm not certain. I don't think so.
We'll have to look on the website.
Yeah, but we're looking.
Given what I saw them have, I think they would be very clear to have the university UCAP at the advanced level. Maybe they just need to put the application in, but based on the conversations we had, and I know he made, Stokely and I were talking, and they are considering applying for Centers of Actuarial Excellence, which is a separate designation that we talked about yesterday as well.
So yeah, we definitely have the VE credits. In the long term, when the program started in 2011, one of the long-term goals is ultimately to get CAE recognition, to become a Center of Actuarial Excellence. The UCAP thing is one of the steps in that process, which I didn't know that much about it, so it's something we probably just have to apply for, and we're probably well on the road to getting that. I'm also in the process of trying to get exemptions from the good folks at the IFOE from their exams, and I've started that process. And then I found out today that it may be possible to get exemptions from the South African professional body, which I didn't even know about. So that's something we want to work towards as well. Yes, sorry, yeah.
Just to confirm, it is UCAP. I don't know if it's or is that like UCAP.
We are UCAP. Oh wow, okay, so there we go.
You didn't even know it. That's a good one.
My question is, do you offer any general insurance courses to your students? Like which ones?
Right. So the loss models 1 and loss models 2, they cover courses related to general insurance issues, which are short-term actuarial modeling. So there are, and again, many of what they would cover in the program, although it doesn't specific. I mean, there's a lot of material in the degree that someone who's writing the CAS exams would have had a solid foundation to prepare for the CAS exams. I mean, in the elective courses that we have, which we are bringing on stream, in those elective courses, we want to incorporate more material related to general insurance. So those are courses that aren't on stream as yet, but we are bringing it on stream, and we are adjusting the syllabi of those courses to incorporate more general insurance topics. Yeah. So loss models 2, for instance, which is an elective course which started last year for the first time, is being offered again this year. The material in that is, of course, directly related to what would have been the old CAS 4B, which is the exam that I wrote. I don't know what the equivalent it is now. But yes, so those courses are directly have applications to the CAS syllabus. Yeah.
Okay.
Just a slight observation. And we have that table where you are talking about percentages of those who, so that it seems the total is not, it's more than 100. So I expect.
That's a good one, but oops. I think we take this one, and then who? No, you. Okay.
Thank you, Andy and Stokely. This is a fascinating presentation. My name is Jesse Dapa. I would first like to applaud most actuarial programs for the emphasis on predictive analytics. That role had been delegated to data scientists and predictive modelers in the past, and I think the move to beef up the statistical acumen of the actuary is a step in the right direction, because I believe that data scientists would never be too curious about actuarial issues to use his or her acumen to solve actuarial specific problem. So, training actuaries to have mastery in statistics is a step in the right direction. I was wondering if you think, and I want to hear both of your perspectives on this, if you think that there is a need to develop an actuaritician, and I'll explain what I mean by an actuaritician. So this would be an actuary who is as competent in statistics as any other, and he or she would use such mastery in statistics to develop statistical solutions to actuarial specific problems. And you think about in economics, they have a subset of economists who become econometricians. Do you believe we need to cultivate actuariticians, given how prevalent data science has been in actuarial science?
Where are you coming from? I work for Indeed, representing the CAS here. Okay, right. Because final year exam questions you're asking.
I guess this is my personal view, because that catching me off guard here. But I would say I would think that would be a level of specialty that individuals would tend to go into, as opposed to we would necessarily put that into our examination program. At that level, there was a question even this morning around demography, for example. That's an important subset of what actuaries do, but we've actually taken most demography I mean, there used to be a demography exam as part of our credentialing pathway. That's not there anymore because that's not what we see as a critical role of what actuaries do. I don't think those two things are comparable in the sense that, the statistical things that you're talking about are kind of, forefront of what's going on. But my sense is at least, it's a level of detail that probably people might want to specialize, or it might be something where we would create a certificate or maybe a course on that might not be a required part of the credentialing pathway, but something that somebody who wants to get that specialized knowledge would need to know. I mean, the challenge that we face as the SOA is whenever we put something new on our examination pathway, we have to find something to take off. Occasionally we put something new and don't take it off, but that we don't, our candidates don't like that very much, right? An employer, nobody wants to increase the travel time to get through the examination process. It's hard enough as it is. So, when we added this last advanced topics in predictive analytics, we took off an exam in investment in IFM, investments in, what's it stand for? I forget. Investments in financial management. Yeah, and we took that off, even though that's still important stuff, but, it's in other places in the material, and we had to take something off. So it's a matter of prioritization.
Well, I think to some extent what you're asking about is being done already. I mean, certainly at the degree level. So for example, in our program, I told you there are 3 elective courses that students have to do. They have a choice. So for instance, students could decide to do an elective course in multivariate stats, in experimental design, and loss models 2. Well, loss models 2 is all statistical models that you're using with applications, yes, in insurance, but could be applied to anything as such. So, and then you made a reference to econometrics. Well, we actually have a course, the book that we use for the course, all is called Applied Regression and Time Series Analysis. Well, guess what the name of the book is, the text that we use for that course is Econometrics. So that's just the economist's way. Econometrics is just time series analysis and regression analysis, but that's what the economists call it. Yeah? So, and again, that's a core requirement in our program. The SOA used to have a course specifically for that. It used to be the 120 time series and regression analysis. So I think that's already being done to some extent, certainly at the university level, and certainly the skills that you get as you go through the education process with the SOE or the IFA and whatnot, it certainly gives you a solid foundation in statistics, where if you decided that you wanted to go and do interesting things, specifically related to stats and statistical techniques and such, it's quite easy for you to segue into that. So I don't think, I think that's already being done from my perspective, and being done quite well. Yeah.
The last question from me. I saw one of your slides, MOUs on the exchange programs. I saw University of Ghana, 2001. What have you been doing? 20 years? 20? Yes. Yeah, I think you must activate some of them, like you said.
So they're activated, but the universities don't have to renew it. So it's there.
Yeah.
Don't reactivate it.
Yeah, I can see University of Ghana, Cape Coast. Where? UPSC is a small boy. Was just born some few years ago. You are talking about matured guys, and you are talking about University of Professional Studies. Oh, just recently.
I'm having only 2 small comments. I'm called Roger Muremye from Rwanda, University of Rwanda. So you have presented from your university. So I didn't see the modules of quantitative courses, specifically mathematics, advanced mathematics and basic mathematics. I didn't see them into your presentation. And another comment goes to Peter. This word is now developing in terms of big data analytics you are talking about. I can support the idea of my colleague there, use of this big data analytics, specifically once you are analyzing the data, or these images or videos, so we are using some big data analytics. So what do you think about in the future to introduce the concept of these big data analytics techniques into actuarial professionalism to our students? Thank you. And for the last, so I want to converse with you how to sign an MOU with your University of Rwanda. We are having a bachelor's degree and a master's and PhD in data science and even in the actuarial.
Okay, thank you. I think you want to say something? Okay.
Well, I'm not sure if I totally understood the question, but I mean, I think the idea of these big data techniques, I mean, we are trying to teach that to understand the use of big data. That's the point of a lot of these exams. And what I was talking about is, taking that big data and finding what the correlations and what you can learn from that, and making sure you also don't get bad results, so that you're using results that aren't appropriate. I mean, you can create a model and you end up with a model creating discriminatory results because you're using another factor that isn't actually that's correlated to something that you can't legally use by law, and then you end up using something else that ends up being a proxy variable, and so these are all important things beyond just sort of the techniques. So I think one of the things that we believe, at least the actuarial education around predictive analytics, part of that important bit is understanding not just how to create the models, but the understanding, setting it in the business context where actuaries work traditionally, but also helping them to understand those other areas where they can work, but also then sort of the ethical aspects around big data, which I don't think a lot of data scientists, they don't have that particular perspective. So I think that's a unique perspective that we as actuaries bring. I'm not sure I really answered your question, so feel free to catch me afterwards.
Right. Okay, so one of the things you asked, you mentioned that I didn't include any of the math courses, the advanced math courses in my presentation. Yeah, so let's be clear. What I presented here were the courses in the curriculum in St. Augustine, in Trinidad, that are related, have components in them for modeling and data analytics. It's not a comprehensive list of all of the courses that we have in the program. So of course, yes, we have advanced calculus, we have lots of math courses that are included. But yeah, because I just wanted to focus on things related specifically where we have data analytics and modeling, specific modeling in them, those courses. So that's why I didn't discuss the courses that you were asking about. Yeah. So I was to address that. Then secondly, well, yeah, I think that what we discussed, what I presented here, and what we have tried to incorporate into some of our courses is specifically to arm our graduates with a skill set for understanding big data and understanding how to use it to come up with models, to come up with solutions to real-world problems. Yeah. So obviously, it's always going to be a work in progress. Who knows what big data will evolve into in the future. So things constantly are working in progress. We're always trying to get better. We're always striving to perfection. Of course, we're never going to reach it, but it's all about the journey, right? And yeah, we can talk about the arrangements that we have with various universities, including yours, subsequently. I hope I answered all of your questions. Yeah.
I said to have an MOU with you, so we shall have some conversation on it.
Sure, yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, and another applause for them. We have really enjoyed this session as well. We continue. You can take your seat. Thank you. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. I'm really happy for this ATC. We are getting there. They presented something we have been doing after graduation. We try to provide this skill set to our graduates, and we put them in companies. We attach them. That's ASG. We are doing that. But if it is done in the universities, our job is done. So they can be absorbed into the industry. Because we give them the theories. They are very good at the theories. But an actuary has to do the job. I always say if you can't do the job, don't call yourself an actuary. You must be able to do the job and do it well. And for that, we give another applause to our presenters. We have the next session. It's a plenary one from the IFOA. They're storming the stage. We invite Roseanne Harris. We invite Kojo Esel Mesa. Please take your seat. And then, is this Sahib? Sahib. You are welcome. Adam. Oh, shall we welcome them with a... They don't need it, yeah. Please take it to the other side, yeah.
I'm just afraid of falling out, falling off. All right, so.
Good. You would moderate, right?
Yes, I am moderating.
So you can face them.
Okay, yep. Okay, I'm just afraid of falling.
I'll hold you.
Okay.
Okay.
Is there any way you can stop it from rolling? So I won't fall off?
Once it says okay, you'll be fine.
Okay, yes, because it could be very embarrassing. Oh, God. Yes, no, I'm fine. I just won't move. Hello, everyone. My name is Irene Redman, and I'm head of New Markets Development at the Institute and Faculty of Actuaries, the IFOA. And we are going to be speaking about the collaboration between research and research between academia and industry. And on behalf of the IFOA, I would like to thank the organizers, the Actuarial Society of Ghana and the IAA Africa Committee, for putting this together and for their kind invitation to bring our colleagues together. And so what we thought is we would bring together people who do have one foot in academia and people who do have one foot in industry and have the experience of both, because then they can speak from actual experience and background. So instead of me introducing them, I would like each of them to introduce themselves, give a little bit of an idea of their background and how they came to have academic and industry experience, and then also spend about 5 minutes speaking to perhaps some of the topics or the ideas that has come from thinking about being part of this session. So what I will do is, I think we started in a different direction, but I was thinking, should we start with you, Sahib? Would you mind? Okay.
Right, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sahib. I think you'll see me on the screen shortly as you change the slide. So Sahib Singh Khosla from Nairobi, Kenya. And as Irene has introduced, I have experience both in practice, I'm in consulting, and I'm also in academia. I am the program director at one of the local universities in Nairobi, and that's been going on for quite some time. I joined as a part-time academic 10 years back, and I escalated in terms of my responsibility, and I lead the program, and I dare to say it's one of the better programs in the country, and quite inspired by the developments happening in the Caribbean. And actually I was taking some snapshots and sending them back to my dean, putting a challenge upon us to improve our program. Largely been an actuary, 15 years since I was a student, and then worked in industry for a while, worked with the local regulator, find myself now consulting across the region, and as well as the academic examples. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. I think you've heard from me. So my name is Roseanne Harris, and I am currently serving as president of the IAA, but my day job is as health policy actuary at Discovery Health in Johannesburg. So Discovery Health is the largest health insurer in South Africa. Also has some partner markets around the world, so getting some exposure as well on a global basis, and it's a strong analytics capability. And my academic side is that I am part-time staff at Wits University in Johannesburg. I'm an adjunct professor in the School of Statistics Natural Science. I've been doing that, as I said earlier, for about 25 years, and of course I never really left Wits. I studied there myself, so I was almost an umbilical cord that has kept me attached to my university, but I certainly do enjoy the teaching aspect, and very happy to be talking about research, because I think research is a critical component of education.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Yes, I'm Kojo Esal-Mensah. I'm a senior lecturer and coordinator for the Actuarial Science program at the University of Professional Studies, Accra, in Ghana here. I'm also a director and a senior actuary at Very Bright Limited. It's a consultancy firm that I'm currently building. Yes, so I have over 20 years experience in life insurance, and about 10 years in academia. My life insurance experience is mainly in valuations, with specific focus on embedded values, reserving, experience investigation, and regulatory reporting. My teaching experience covers both the secondary and then the tertiary levels. And I've actually worked in 3 different countries. I've worked in Ghana, I've worked in South Africa, and I've also worked in the UK. Currently, I'm a member of the Education Committee for Actuarial Society of Ghana, and we are busy developing our own professional courses. Yeah, we haven't reached there yet, but we are busy developing it. I also serve on a panel at the Ghana Tertiary Education Commission, where we assist with the accreditation of actuarial science courses and insurance-related courses at the various institutions across the country. I'm sure you'll be wondering why I'm here, because you cannot see FFA or FIA on the list there. But I actually qualified as an actuary through the Institute and Faculty of Actuaries. So even though I'm not a member, I qualified through them. I also qualified through, after that I qualified through the Actuarial Society of South Africa, and I'm now a fellow member of the Actuarial Society of Ghana. And just last year, I had my PhD in actuarial science at the University of Pretoria in South Africa. Thank you.
When we were pulling, thank you very much, Sahib and Roseanne and Kojo. When we were pulling this together, one of the things that I thought was really fascinating is that each one of these had some really passionate ideas and thoughts and concerns and just things to discuss. And it was just absolutely amazing to understand. So what I wanted to ask is, could you spend 5 minutes perhaps talking about some of the things when you looked at the topic of research, how can we bring academia and industry together, especially so that it's relevant for the academics, but it's also relevant for industry within the actuarial profession. Because sometimes within the actuarial profession, they're seen as the academics are over here and the practitioners in industry are over there, and there's very rarely, it's very sort of two different places and very little in between. So I'm not sure who would like to begin with their 5 minutes of what they feel passionate about. Kojo?
I'll go ahead. Well, research needs to be relevant to the industry. It has to be. Any research that we conduct has to be relevant to the industry. And it is the industry players who don't know about their challenges, issues, and problems. So the best thing to do is to have a two-way communication channel between the industry and then the educators or the researchers. So whereby the industry conveys their problems, issues to the researchers, and then the researchers also share their findings and recommendations with them. Yes, so sorry about that. Yes, so there need to be a platform, networking platform, right? Networking platform between the industry and then the educators themselves. I'm sure you'll be talking about, this platform that I'm talking about is in seminars and conferences and all those things. I'm sure you'll be saying that we've been doing this anyway. We have our actuarial seminars and sessional meetings, and we go through all this. So what's the difference then? With the actuarial seminars and conferences that we have, it's usually between the actuaries themselves. It's not between the industry and then the educators, okay? And then the industry also go for their strategic meetings and come up with all this. So we need to have something, interaction between the actuaries and then the industry and then the educators, and that will help us to develop the research work properly. I will actually go with an example on financial stability, because that's what I'm currently working on. If I want to conduct any research on financial stability, the World Bank has got a database of various economies. I can just pick data from there and then do a bit of literature reviews and then run it on my model, and I'll get my result. So I'll be able to produce a lot of papers, and then in fact, we get promoted through the number of papers that we get. If you get a lot of papers, you get promoted. But is that what we want to do? It has to be relevant. There's no use having all these papers if it's not going to be used or applied at the industry level. So in the case of the financial stability, I will want to approach the central bank of the particular country that I'm working with. Perhaps if you're looking at maybe a country that has got inflation targeting regime, there could be that their inflation is quite way above the target that they've set themselves in. And it's been on for a long time. So through discussions between the central bank and then the researcher, you're able to shape the research question and come up with something good. It could even be capital requirements. It could be that the banks are struggling, some of the banks are struggling with the capital, minimum capital, yes. And what do you do with them? Do you just revoke their licenses or you apply penalties? So discussions on all these things then will come up with something good to do. So that's about the interaction between the educators and then the industry. But let's look at our education system itself. It is currently less focused when it comes to research. If you go, because I'm representing the Institute and Faculty of Actuaries, I would like to use them as an example. If you go through them, it's only in the fellowship level that they have an option for the research. There's a research paper that one can do, but even then, that is an option. So not everybody does it. So somebody will go through the whole process of qualification and then not done much research there. So what I'm trying to propose is that there should be a kind of compulsory subject related to research. Maybe it could be research methods where it's done so that when you qualified as an actuary, even though you didn't do research, once you are in the industry and there's the need for such work to be done, you'll be able to apply it because you've done the research methods. Then there's also the universities. The universities, they do research, all right, yes, but even with the universities also, I'm talking about the graduate, undergraduate level. It's usually the final year that we have the project work. And then at the final year, at some universities, the project work is not even compulsory. And also, some of them, they only give it to the best student. So again, people will go through the university and then still not have that bit of research. What I actually want the universities to do is the research starts from the very first year. Once you get to the first year, you start your research. So every course that you do, there should be a kind of allocation given to research in the assessment. So every course you do it, you assess on your research work, and then this builds up. So by the time you get to the final year, you're already well, into research, and that helps a lot. Then what the industry actually comes in is to fund the research. It's not a waste of resources when you do fund research. It's very important you fund it, because if you don't do that, you may do some things that may not actually work. So you need to fund the research. Industry also should assist with internship, where students are allowed to go to various companies and then practice. It could be on vacation, or even there could be times allocated during the semester or the term where they could, do this internship. So by the time you get to the workplace, you're already, well versed in research. I will leave it to my colleagues to continue, and then if there's any other thing, I will add. Thank you.
Thanks, Kojo. So, Gary gets some applause. So yes, I completely agree with the notion that, that from the point of view of driving our profession forward, that it is absolutely critical that we promote research and that we instill that capability to do research in the newly qualified actuaries that are coming through the profession. I think this, the point of relevance is something that you have highlighted already, but I'd like to put an extra spin on that, in that remembering our professional promise as actuaries is serving the public interest. And so we must be cautious that we don't always see research as something that needs to have commercial value, but also something that needs to have public interest value. And hopefully those are well intertwined. In other words, if you are doing something that is of public interest value, that doing the right thing yields returns. So I think it's important that that there is a sort of an academia in terms of promoting that kind of research, and I'll come back to that at the end, what I would call almost the blue sky, the less structured research, because we do tend to, when we think about commercially framed research, or industry-framed research, it tends to be a lot more focused. Very clear research questions, a very clear set of analysis, which is, of course has an important place. And the bridge between the commercial space and the academic space is in terms of ensuring that there is a rigorous and robust approach that is taken with respect to that research. So certainly, as Coach has highlighted, we need to be thinking about the platforms for sharing research. And I guess this raises one of the challenges in terms of research that might be done in industry, is the issue of, of trade confidentiality. So in terms of the willingness of entities to share the research that they might be doing internally, and creating opportunities for that to be done in a way that is not breaching confidentiality around data, and of course around trade confidentiality and competition issues as well. So I think important to think about how we as professional bodies, for example, as well as academic institutions, can create those appropriate platforms for sharing. And also for building that collaboration, because there is an important bridge between the academic space and the commercial space in terms of things like generating the ideas. So in the academic space, there may well be sort of very, as I said, blue sky ideas that are generated, whereas in the industry space, they would be a lot more focused in terms of research questions. And of course, the blend of those can perhaps develop research questions which perhaps have broader interest and broader scope. What industry brings is, of course, access to data, often more structured data sets than would be available in the public domain, is available through industry, and perhaps the opportunity to pool that kind of data, as well as you've highlighted, funding and logistical support. Don't underestimate the need for logistical support, particularly when it comes to dealing with large data sets. Where you can have experienced academic researchers. You don't want them to be spending their time cleaning data and necessarily managing the model runs, but having that logistical support also facilitates the application of that expertise. So how do we promote that research? And reference is made to having, the postgraduate curriculum requirements. Certainly at my university, it's a requirement that I think it's 1/3 of the marks for postgraduate programs need to be associated with doing research. But the challenge that I always find is that it's one thing to have the research being done by actuarial students, but when it comes to research that is of value to industry, they often need someone with more experience who's involved perhaps in supervising or planning that research. And so there's a need to think beyond just academic research in the context of students and projects to actually perhaps application of higher level interpretation of those research outputs. And then finally, just to close off, coming back to my blue sky point, I listened in on a webinar a couple of weeks ago around epidemiological research. And it was interesting how they talked about the challenge of research funding in the context that, the large pharmaceutical companies are focused on specific research around, new products that they're developing, as opposed to, the academic epidemiologists that are focused on finding solutions for diseases, as opposed to necessarily testing a particular marketable treatment. And so I was thinking about that in the context of our profession, is that making sure that in promoting research, we're not just looking at sort of industry-focused questions, but also perhaps a little bit more of that blue sky research of looking for things. I thought about all the work that's been done around climate risk, for example, as a good case study in terms of what's been generated. And certainly I'm very proud of the Climate Risk Task Force and how prolific they have been in the papers they have generated. And a lot of that, I think, if you'll pardon the pun, has come from blue sky research of trying to understand a fairly amorphous problem. And actually, ultimately, particularly if you look at the last paper, the fourth paper, and I've had the privilege of seeing the first draft of the next one, something that is actually of very practical application to actuaries reporting on climate risk. So I think that's a good example of collaboration actually leading to something in terms of a very usable result. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for those thoughts. I think maybe based off practical experience from the Kenyan market, what we are doing to try to encourage this collaboration between the academic space and the professional space, one is through the local actuarial society. So as has been spoken, just a case example, just today the Actuarial Society of Kenya had a conversation with the National Treasury to create government bonds. Now that came in through the Association of Kenyan Insurers that were keen to develop long-term products. So it's very specific research. Who ended up doing the data and the modeling were the students. And so the Actuarial Society created that bridge to allow students to use their time and their knowledge to help solve a problem the society and the Association of Kenyan Insurers is trying to solve. So the societies locally, and this would be a challenge to all the societies across Africa, is to create that bridge. So the students aren't just doing projects, which is blue sky, and the industry is being spoken to, and I think the societies have a role to play, the associations or the societies. Secondly is looking back at what we are doing at Strathmore, which is the university I represent, is we are trying to encourage our staff to be involved in industry. Whether this is paid or unpaid, we'd like them to be exposed to the actual practical aspects of the work as opposed to just the academic, and that creates a stronger network for the students. So this is as opposed to the university having a relationship, say, with a bank or an insurer, but having our tutors actually do some projects for these corporates really creates a network that allows the practical aspects of research to come through. So when the bank has a particular issue they want to look at, they know who to speak to. It's easier than from a top-down level where we involve the bank's probably chief executive and the university's vice chancellor. So just getting our academics involved within industry, we believe, is a way forward to enable the research that we produce be more valuable to the society we live in. Thank you.
Okay, I'm conscious of the time that we're trying to pack in a lot, but one question that I would like the panelists to potentially speak to, and you've all touched on it in some way, is this platform between academia and industry and how the importance of the local society, because you all work very closely with your local society and perhaps other societies, is with your industry hat on, is how, and your local society hat, how do you think and what do you think you could advise other local societies of how they could bring academics on? And then, because we have a lot of academics here, and with your academic hat on, how could you advise the academics to start working more closely, where they don't wait to be asked? What could they do of their own part to work more closely with the local society? And really, let's focus on our local societies, which is what everyone interacts with on a day-to-day basis. So I'm not sure who would like to go first. Academic hat, industry hat. Okay.
So I'm thinking about our main event in South Africa. The Actuarial Society of South Africa has an annual convention. And what I understand from engaging with my colleagues in other associations around the world is that what is quite unique about our annual convention is that it is a cross-discipline. So we don't, although we have sort of individual, sort of like a health day and a life day and a general insurance day, we have a two-day convention which is across disciplines. And it's quite prestigious to have your paper recognized and presented at the convention. So there's a process that you go through in terms of submitting a paper for consideration and it being approved for being part of the program. So it creates this kind of aura in terms of the prestige of presenting that event, which encourages participation. And I think an interesting trend that I've noticed as well is that I'm seeing more collaboration between people in industry, so perhaps where they have a project that they may have worked on that they want to share on that convention platform, is then reaching out to, say, the academics to support them in terms of writing it up. Which of course then has its own benefits in terms of perhaps extending the work that's been done through the questions that academic partnership might entail. So I think creating that that space for that presentation, and of course there's awards for the best paper that are sponsored and so forth, and amongst the newly qualified actuaries, it becomes a way to showcase particular skills and create a name for yourself in the and build your career credentials by being part of presenting a paper. So it's worth investing in sort of creating that kind of platform for presentation.
Thank you. Yes, we are not. We don't have our education system going on yet, so at the moment we're currently busy trying to get that one. But I will also say that we need things like what we're doing now. It could be a bit expensive trying to get this regularly, but we can have platform like this where we have our seminars, and even these days, thanks to COVID, you can do some of the things online. So you invite people from industry, and then you go through all these channels that we're talking about, and I'm sure that could actually help a lot. But on our part, our emphasis now is to try and have our own education system going. So once we get that done, then we'll try and push it forward. And well, since we are talking about actuarial journals and all those things, I want to make a general comment. Most of the educators, when these days, because the actuarial journal is not that highly ranked, you see, most of the educated actually try to publish in other journals. It could be economics or finance or whatever. But I would rather try to say that let's encourage our people to publish in journals that we have. In Ghana, we don't have, but definitely South Africa has, UK has. Let's try and publish in those papers, and by doing that, we'll be able to also get it to a higher rank that everybody wants to publish in those papers. Thank you.
I think mine goes back to experience from the Kenyan market, and looking at how we have tried to encourage this collaboration both from the academic space and from the professional space is the question is, when you have a conference run by a corporate, you'll see that advertised really well and attended across the industry. But when you have an academic conference, and many of the academicians in the room will agree, most of your attendees are only academicians. No one else attends those conferences. So again, in Nairobi, we've used the local actuarial society, and whenever one of the universities has maybe financial modeling or some focused actuarial sort of subjects within the conference, we tend to advertise that to the practitioners for them to come see what the academics are doing research on, and surprisingly it actually yields good fruit. We do have professionals that do join who otherwise won't have. So I think it's just using your local professional society to really put yourself out there as academics as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm conscious of the time and would like to allow the audience to have the opportunity to ask any questions, if there is anyone who would like to ask a question. And so we have a question. The first hand went up in the back, and then the second hand, and the third hand. So.
Thank you very much.
My name is Wise Shugudu, partner at EY in actuarial and actuarial lead. My contribution is really in two things. The first one is relating to that collaboration between industry and academia in the way that I have seen it done in other parts of the world where things do work quite well. The first one is to do with the incubation of ideas coming from academia into the commercial space. Industry is motivated by profit, and industry is trying to solve real-world problems that will eventually hit their bottom line, either immediately or even into the future. There is a major problem within the insurance sector in Africa, which is how do we create relevant products so that we may attain insurance penetration? Penetration rates in Africa are less than 10%. What can academia do to encourage the development of products that gets to the people who are not covered by insurance at the moment? When you have an incubation on campus, you can actually then allow industry to delegate the process of developing those relevant products to the students, and that can be done through incubators like what most universities in the UK or in Europe, as you know, California, in Silicon Valley, or Oxford, Cambridge, they have incubators where students' ideas are actually funded, and eventually they may start small startups, but the products that come out of that can eventually be scaled up. Because for me, financial inclusion and penetration is a big issue in Africa. The second one is just impact. That has no commercial value today, as you alluded, Roseanne. Relevant research sometimes does not necessarily have to be commercial. Eventually, it becomes commercialized. One very good example is Africa Risk Capacity, which started off with some students researching the relationship between rainfall and the satellite data that is collected. And the outcome of it eventually became a parametric weather insurance product that is now providing insurance coverage for millions of vulnerable people in Africa that had no access to insurance at all. That is another very good example of where research that was never intended to end up in the commercial space eventually yielded a result that led to the development of insurance products that have now become commercialized and become important. But getting that bridge that has been discussed, that ecosystem, to continually evolve and develop between industry and academia is incredibly important. My last point, let the actuaries that are in industry, if you have an opportunity, and I'm speaking to other academic people here in universities, if you have any opportunity at all to work with your actuarial society so that actuaries that are actually in industry can come and speak at your universities and share out the ideas and challenges that are currently in industry, will also help in the way that you structure your research, so that not only will your research be very academically sound, but you can also have research that can actually be targeted at solving real-world commercial problems that the industry is facing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will start from where he stopped, because he touched a little bit of what I wanted to suggest before I make my own major point, which I think the panelists here missed totally. I'm suggesting, as a team of actuaries, they can be in their own home, develop a case, then bring it to the university and sponsor it. Because I had one of you mentioned of fund. Fund is a major problem. Bring it to the students with their supervisors. They will work on it. Then it will become intellectual property of that, either the organization or the students concerned. So my second point is on interdisciplinary activities. You didn't talk about it at all. Modern research and experience has shown that interdisciplinary research activities yields more positive results. Bring somebody in actuary, bring somebody in education, bring somebody in law, bring somebody in whatever discipline, form a team. Whatever result that will emanate from that activity will be stronger than doing it only actuaries coming out with something. Because we are discussing actuarial science. And you know, actuarial science, you can't talk of actuarial science without thinking of human beings. I heard you when you talk about modeling of health, and I think it's a major area. So if you have interdisciplinary research activity, it covers all the aspects of human being, and the result will be stronger than single fellow or one particular discipline carrying out the research. So that's my own contribution. Thank you.
I think we have one other question here. There you are. Thank you.
My name is Ajijola Lukman from Department of Actuarial Science, University of Lagos, Nigeria. To add up to what the two speakers mentioned earlier, my first question is just maybe a question or a contribution. Is that, different area or different countries, though maybe generally in Africa, we have different issues. Because you might think of a particular research, like of the first
Thank you. Thank you, Coach.
Thank you. Another round of applause. At this point, we've been sitting for some time. It's not good for our health. So we'll just break for 15 minutes, take coffee, tea, and then come in, and then we'll go to the final stages. Thank you. You are dismissed for now.